This screencast is intended to visually demonstrate, because sometimes that makes it easier to figure out, how to use VNC, specifically in the Messiah College of Engineering and Computer Science, to connect to Unix/Linux servers specifically, or at least the most heavily used in our case, nemo.ece.pdx.edu for running all kinds of crazy EC applications. All right, so first, I'm sitting in front of what is effectively a Windows desktop. This is a supported Windows load, so there's a bunch of stuff on it that you might not necessarily have on, say, your laptop, but I'll walk through getting that too. So first, I'm going to start a browser. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about what VNC is or how it works. Just know that it is a means of getting access to a remote graphical desktop environment on a Unix/Linux box. It's kind of like a remote desktop for Unix Linux. All right, so first I'm going to go to cat.pdx.edu. All of the information, all the details, all the technical numbers and stuff that you actually need to make this work are available on this site. Specifically, I'm going to say if you go to, there's two things. If you go to Windows on the platforms here at the top, and then look for Secure VNC from Windows, this tutorial is going to talk you through setting up a VNC connection from a Windows host. Okay, so that's where the documentation is. That's where you can refer back to after you've watched me and going through it, trying to figure it out, and don't feel like skipping through the video and all that fun stuff. So first, VNC is a server client model, which basically means the first thing, you'll actually have to have a program running on your target, which I'm going to call Nemo. You'll have to have a program running on Nemo to connect to before you can actually start a session. So to do that, you'll need to start a shell on Nemo or a command line and actually start up the server. So from Windows, my SSH client of choice is called Putty, P-U-T-T-Y. Putty is a free application. It's available online. If you Google for Putty, P-U-T-T-Y, it's pretty much going to be the first result that comes up. There's a download link. I'm just going to go ahead and download. It's a standalone exe. It doesn't actually need to be installed or anything like that. If you just click on putty.exe for Windows on Intel x86, go ahead and save that file. It'll get saved to your download directory wherever that happens to be. In my case, I have a copy available on my desktop, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on that. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is just connect to your server. In my case, Nemo. So I'm going to type nemo.ece.pdx.edu into the host name. And because my sole purpose this time around is just to start the server, I'm not going to bother trying to connect the client yet. That's good enough. I'm going to go ahead and hit open. So it's going to ask me to log in. The first time you connect, it'll talk about a server key and fingerprint and all that kind of fun stuff. You can probably just click yes. Security gurus are going to shoot me for saying that. But just click yes. Type in my password. All right, so now I have a prompt. The command to start a VNC server is going to be VNC server. You want to add -localhost after that. What this does, something you need to know about the VNC server protocol is that by default it is completely unsecured, meaning that everything you type into a VNC server is going to be shipped over the wire in plain text. This includes things like passwords, usernames. If you were typing information into a website like a credit card, social security number, anything you send over, anything you see, anything you type is unencrypted and could be sniffed if you were transmitting it over an insecure connection. So what we're going to do is we're going to insist to the VNC server that it only listen to connections that it believes originate directly from Nemo itself. That's what -localhost does. And we're going to actually use a third-party application, in this case SSH, to establish a secure connection to Nemo rather than shipping all of that sensitive information over the wire in plain text. So VNC server -localhost. Okay, it's going to start up. Notice here, the first thing it's going to say is new X desktop is nemo.ece.pdx.edu : and then it's going to give you a number. This number is very important. This is the number you'll use to refer to this session later on. Okay. One thing to note is that on some servers we actually have a script enabled which limits the number of active VNC sessions a person can have at one time to 1. So if for example, I were to type VNC server-localhost again, I would get basically a warning message, wait a second, no, you already have a VNC server running, so you're good to go. All right, so now that that's started, I'm actually going to go ahead and exit. I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to disconnect. Okay, so remember that number. In this case, my number was 10. This is going to be important. So now I'm going to establish another session, this time for the sole purpose of opening a tunnel, as it were, from my client, my Windows client, to nemo.ece. And this tunnel is going to be encrypted. It's going to be secure. It's going to be something that I can type a password over and not worry about it too much. Okay? So the first thing, to establish a tunnel, you'll need to select under Connection, SSH, and you'll need to select Tunnels. And what you want to do is type in source port. Now this is where the number comes in. A little bit of math here. It's 5900 plus whatever number you have. So in this case I had 10, so mine's going to be 5910. And destination is going to be localhost, colon, and then that same number. So 5900 plus 10, so 5910. Once you've added those two, go ahead and click the Add button next to the source port. That's going to show up in your forwarded ports list. All right, so that's good to go. So then go back to Session here at the top. Type in your host name, which in my case is nemo.ece.pdx.edu. Go ahead and hit Open. Log in as you normally would. All right, and now your session is open, your tunnel is open, and you're actually good to go. I'm going to say one thing, and we might cut this out and move it around. One thing that I forgot to mention a second ago is the first time you start a VNC session, you'll actually have to set a VNC password. Access to the VNC server is separate from access to your MKX account, which means you have a separate password for it. The command to set that password is going to be VNC password, spelled P-A-S-S-W-D. If you just type that in, it'll ask you to enter and confirm a password. It'll ask you about a view-only password. Unless you know what this is, I'd recommend you just select no, and you're good to go. So now that I've established this connection, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to immediately minimize it. Don't close it, because remember, this is your tunnel. This is how you're shipping data between your Windows host and nemo.ece. So don't close it, just minimize it. The next thing is you'll actually need a VNC client. The VNC client that's available on MKX Tier 1 supported hosts is called TightVNC, or TightVNC Viewer specifically. If you go to My Computer and then go to // that's Programs on KEX Resources, Programs, TightVNC2, click on that. There's going to be a VNC Viewer application here. If you click on that, the TightVNC server is going to be localhost, colon, and then 5900 plus that number, so 5910. Go ahead and click Connect. And this is going to be that VNC password I mentioned earlier. It's not your MKX password. It's the password you entered when you typed VNC PASSWD into Nemo. All right. And there we go. In my case, my VNC server desktop is a little bit larger than my Windows desktop. And so I'm having to scroll around and to view the whole thing. But you can actually specify a VNC server size when you first launch it. The command to do that would be something like VNC. By default, if you have a new configuration, the cat has configured our defaults to allow it such that when you click Launch, Log Out, it will actually go ahead and shut down your VNC server for you. If that doesn't happen, if when you click Launch, Log Out, it just returns to a gray screen, you will have to manually close the connection using your terminal. The command to do this again, if you type VNC server and already have a connection running, it will tell you what number it is. In my case, I didn't have one running, so it started a new one for me. VNC server, enter 10. The command to kill it, if it's broken, if it's not working, is VNC server -kill, and then colon, and then that number. My number is 10, so I'll go ahead and hit 10, enter, and it'll kill the VNC process. All right. Now again, if I wanted, let's say that I've already established my connection and I'm looking for a specific port that I already know. Like let's say I want to open a VNC server on port 10. You can actually ask the VNC server, you can actually ask to have a VNC server created on a specific port, and if it's available, you'll get it. The way to do that is if you type VNC server :number, so in my case :10. All right, so using the -geometry flag, 800 by 800, I was able to start a VNC server of a specific size. So this is already, my connection is established. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. Start VNC viewer, localhost 10. And there we have a smaller, although apparently I need to make it even smaller, desktop window. You can experiment and figure out how big it needs to be to work for your computer. So to see the options available to the VNC server, because there's a whole lot of them, when you launch it, type VNC server -H for help and hit enter. That won't actually launch a VNC server, it'll just show you what options are available to you. All right. The other thing to know about a VNC server is that unless you explicitly kill it, or depending on your configuration, if you click that launch logout button and it doesn't show a gray screen but instead immediately disconnects you, if you do not explicitly kill your VNC server, it will continue running forever, or until Nemo shuts down or reboots, whichever comes first. With one exception. On some boxes, specifically Nemo, which have high load, a large number of users and a limited number of system resources, we actually do limit the length of VNC sessions to 12 hours. The way we do this is at 6 o'clock every evening, we scan the system for VNC sessions that have been running for 12 hours or more, and we shut them down. So be aware that VNC sessions are not, if you don't shut them down yourself, they won't die unless they're manually killed by someone else. In this case, the cat kills some of them, but don't trust that. Please, when you're done with the VNC session, go ahead and log out and issue the VNC server -kill command with the display number that VNC server gave you. So in my case, it would be VNC server -kill :10. That helps keep the system up and running, and it makes it so that resources are available for other users, and generally just makes everyone happy. All right, so that's Windows. You can do the same basic procedure on Mac and also on Linux. It's a little bit different how you establish the SSH connection, but the instructions are available just like they are. The instructions are available for Mac and Linux just like they are for Windows on the CAT website, which is cat.pdx.edu. For Linux, if you click on the Linux button on the operating systems platforms up at the top there, and then select Secure VNC from Linux on the left, that's going to be a walkthrough on how to start the server, how to establish the tunnel, and all that fun stuff. Again, we have the same tutorial for Windows under the Windows section.